Right, 1 o'clock. We'll get started. Item 1, membership of the committee. Councillor Sokol.
I serve by Councillor Paul Kane.
Right. Everybody has printed. I'll just remind you to put phones on silent or switch them off, that kind of thing. No iPads, no football watching. Don't want any of that. Naughty. Item 2, minutes of previous meeting. Can we pass them as a correct record? Cool. Item 3, interests and lobbying. I'll start off with Councillor Sokol.
Yeah, Chair. Just a minute. Let me check the page number. Yeah. It's on page 43, the application number 20189374. I just want to disclose, I'm not sure it might be someone involved with it because I'm a trustee of Carl, Kirklees active layer. I need some advice from a legal officer.
Yes, you can note that as an interest, Councillor Sokol, for the purposes of transparency, but you can take part in the meeting. It's just as for noting the nature and the existence of that interest, but you can participate normally.
Thank you, so I can stay on it.
It's lobbying on application 2018/925/686, sorry, which I think we've all had an email about, but no advice given.
Yeah, the same for me as well with the lobbying, but no advice.
None, Chair.
Item 5, any public questions? No. Item 6, any deputations or petitions? Item 7, site visits. We did one site visit this morning up at Fixby. We'll move on to planning applications in a minute, but we're going to have an update on the appeals that's gone out this last year, and it's Ellie, one of our new members of staff, to do it for us.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. My name is Ellie Worth. I have undertaken an analysis of the success of appeal decisions in the Kirklees district as a whole. As you can see, Thank you. As you can see from the pie chart behind, 86% of the total 77 planning applications were dismissed. Of the decisions made by members of the 3 committees, 72% of the 11 appeals were dismissed. Of the appeals that were upheld by the Planning Inspectorate, all were contrary to officer recommendation. The number of appeals dismissed within the district is above the national average for non-major applications. Thank you, Chair.
Right, move on to applications, page 11. This is the one that we went and did a site visit on this morning at Fixby. It's Bill to do the presentation for you.
Thank you, members. Thank you, Chair. My name is Bill Toppin. I'm the case officer for this proposal. As Chair said, you did a site visit this morning And for clarity, we went up to the site here, we looked at the site and a number of the junctions and access points. You looked at access on Gurnhill here, considered junction arrangements here. This is an access point along the Kirklees Way off Lightridge Road. And we also went round Clough Lane and down to this area here, Lower Coat. So we've been all the way around the site and looked at it from a number of different ways and looked at the highways and junction implications. The application site comprises an area of 10.26 hectares. It's located in the north of Huddersfield in Fixby area. It's a number of fields at the minute. There's two large fields. It's flanked by dwellings on the south. This is Gurnhill, dwellings on the south of Gurnhill Avenue, Lightridge Road at this point here, Clough Lane at this point, and then there's a small grouping of dwellings there called Lower Coat. To the south of the site there is a substantial area of ancient woodland. It just dips onto the edge of the site there, so that's relevant there. Also across the site is, and you can just about see a desire land there, that is a public right of way that links from Lightridge to Lower Coat, and that's part of the Kirklees Way. Along the top end of the site here is also a public right of way, so this is a major Kirklees Way public right of way. On the local plan, the adopted local plan, this site is now allocated for housing. I'll just show you some photographs. These are some photographs. So this is the access point off Lightridge Way, and that's the public right of way, the Kirklees Way. This is one of the access points off Gurnhill. There's another one off Gurnhill Avenue. And so this is the junction off Clough Lane going up to Lower Coat. So these are the junction points. This is the junction at Lightridge Road and at Gurnhill that we looked at, and this is the junction at the opposite to the Kirklees Way point there. Right. Full permission is sought for the erection of 252 dwellings, a mixture of houses, mainly between 2 and 5 bedrooms. Mainly detached houses, but there are some terrace properties in there. They're 2-storey, a mixture of materials ranging from art stone to brick and render. There are 3 vehicle access points taken to this site, 2 off Gurnhill Avenue and 1 off Lightridge Road. In terms of issues before you, in terms of principle and policy, this site is now allocated for housing in the adopted local plan, which carries full weight for the determination of applications. Also, the NPPF, there's still the presumption in favour of sustainable development, and that development which accords with an adopted local plan should be determined favourably without delay. As such, there's no objection in principle to the release of this land for housing at this stage, and obviously it would contribute to our new requirement to deliver so many houses in over a 5-year period. The scheme delivers 252 dwellings at a density of 25 per hectare. The local plan normally seeks to achieve higher densities of up to 35, but on this site, given the site constraints, which is around the footpath, ancient woodland and so on, it's felt that a reduced density of 25 is satisfactory and more appropriate to reflect the nature of the surrounding dwellings. So we're accepting that density, or recommend acceptance of that number and that density in this case. Given the size of the site and the numbers of dwellings involved, our new policies in the local plan are affordable housing, provision of public open space and education are applicable. This scheme provides for 50, provides for 50 affordable units. They're the ones that are allocated, indicated with the red stars here. That's 20% of the units. The mixture of the tenure is 27 for social rental and 23 intermediate. That accords with our local plan policy also. So in terms of the affordable housing, the numbers accord with our policy. In terms of the changes to the original scheme, originally the affordables were bunched up in 2 large areas. That's been changed now. They're distributed in a more even way across the site. So that accords with our policy as well, which seeks to have affordable housing integrated within a development rather than segregated. In terms of the public open space, we have a new policy regarding public open space also. In terms of the amount of open space that's provided, that is satisfactory. It relates to the public right of way. There's a central spine there and open space that goes along the top of the development there, and a large area of open space there. So in terms of quantity, it satisfies our policy, but in terms of the range of equipment also, it satisfies our policy. There's a trim trail here which is the equivalent of a LAP, a localised area of play, and this area here will be made up for recreational use. The POS within this site needs to actually be within the site. The site's too far away to accept an off-site contribution, so it satisfies our policies on public open space. The affordable housing, the open space, together with an education contribution of £493,273, will be secured via 106 if this application is secure. The layout of the scheme is considered to be satisfactory with good relationships to the open space, retaining an enhanced public right-of-way through the site, and obviously increasing distances to safeguard the ancient woodland habitat as well. Space about building standards and residential amenity standards are met both within the site and also in relation to neighbouring dwellings. At this point, if I could, I'd ask my colleague Steve Harvey to take you through some of the highways and traffic issues. Thank you.
Through you, Chair, Steve Sampson, Highways Development Management. To summarise the highway section of the report, the proposed development would be developed in two parcels, north and south, connected by footway links only, with vehicular access being taken from 3 points. Two accesses taken from Gurnall Avenue via its junction with Lightbridge Road, which would serve 179 dwellings, plus the existing 32 dwellings already served by Gurnall Avenue. And the third access off Lightbridge Road, which forms part of the Kirklees PROW network and would be made up to an adoptable standard, would serve 73 dwellings plus the existing 3 dwellings. In terms of traffic generation, the northern parcel is forecast to generate 43 two-way movements within the AM peak and 50 movements within the PM peak. The southern parcel off Gurnall Avenue is forecast to generate 107 two-way movements within the AM peak and 122 movements within the PM peak. Modelling and the operational assessment of the junctions and links within the vicinity of the site have been undertaken with highway improvement works required at the Gurnall Avenue junction with Lightbridge Road. This would require the near side curb realigned and footway widened to achieve the required visibility displays. The Lightbridge Road and Clough Lane junction, that joins onto Fixby Road as well, would require the right turn lane on Clough Lane being reconfigured and a central island being located within the junction. Both schemes would be secured by condition and both have undertaken the Stage 1 road safety audit with recommendations noted by the designer and addressed. Further road safety audits will be undertaken at the detailed design stage. Minor works are also recommended at the Bradley Bar roundabout. However, given that the Bradley roundabout is forecast to have major works relating to the development of the local plan sites within the area, it is recommended a financial contribution be secured by Section 106 towards the major highway works. With respect to the internal layout, parking provision and internal circulation areas, these are considered acceptable. Thank you, Chair.
Just some comments on final issues. In terms of landscaping and biodiversity, the scheme has been accompanied by a ecological report the scheme represents an opportunity to improve habitat within the scheme along the new open space areas and safeguards the habitat of the ancient woodland at this point here by significantly increasing the distances from the edge of that ancient woodland. The site is capable and remediated and made fit to receive new development in a satisfactory way. Noise report has been submitted, as was required in the local plan, which identifies appropriate mitigation for certain parts of the site. They tend to be in this part here, where some noise gets through to the site from the M62, but those will be conditioned so that those houses can be occupied satisfactorily. And a quality assessment's been submitted as well, which accords with our West Yorkshire low emission strategy, and appropriate mitigation can be secured and will be secured through condition. In terms of drainage, which is quite an issue on this site, and people may issue, we've been discussing this site with the drainage colleagues and the applicants since the pre-app stage. The additional information was requested and has been forthcoming in an updated flood risk assessment. Given the nature of this site, there is standing water and so on it, infiltration and suds solutions aren't a credible option here. So the second stage of the hierarchy is to identify, which has been done, a surface water, an existing water course for the surface water to actually get into, and the drainage system that has been designed reflects that. Predominantly, you saw when you went on site this morning, you saw at this point here there was like a bit of a waterfall coming out. So most of the water naturally grades that way. So that's essentially the direction of the drainage system, and there will be attenuation and so on under this point here. These issues can be conditioned, and also there's a contribution to off-site improvements which is recommended within the section 106. We've been having some discussions over the past 2 days about flood routing across the site. This is what happens in the event of an extreme weather event, and essentially there were some concerns about the engineering solutions to prevent that from actually encroaching into housing areas and off onto neighbouring developments. But to say our solution has been agreed this morning. It's an engineering solution which would ensure that any excessive water would run through the open space, and I say that would be conditioned as well. So our recommendation is that you obviously delegate this application to us to obviously ensure that we get those engineering solutions for the flood routing, which obviously will then be checked through and obviously part of the approved plans. Delegate to us to secure the signing of a 106 agreement, which would provide the 50 affordable houses, an education contribution of 493,297, the provision and subsequent maintenance of the public open space within the site, the off-site highway contribution to Bradley Bar that Steve mentioned before, £15,000 contribution towards the monitoring of a residential travel plan, £10,000 towards real-time bus information. I said £10,000 towards off-site drainage improvements and repairs, and a Metro card contribution of £124,000. Obviously, complete the list of conditions and any other additional conditions that members may require. Once that's done, issue the decision notice. Thank you, Chair.
We have 3 speakers. First one we have is Paul Oldfield, who applies to the application.
Good afternoon. Paul Oldfield, I'm a resident and a representative of the Fixby Residents Organisation. Fixby is an attractive residential area due largely to the sensible balance between high quality properties and open spaces, but is already densely populated and simply cannot accommodate any high volume development. Over the past 10 years we have challenged and objected consistently on the grounds of maintaining the semi-rural ambience of Fixby by protecting the green belt and other open spaces from irreversible and adversely impacting house building. Consequently, we were very pleased to see the Council share our ambitions in the local plan with the clearly stated strategic objectives including protecting and improving green infrastructure, providing access to good quality open spaces, protecting and enhancing the characteristics of the environment and local distinctiveness, and promoting the use of brownfield land. These objectives, or promises, form the basis on which local residents expect the right long-term planning decisions to be made. The recent adoption of the local plan, which includes the Fixby Lower Coat Greenbelt land, clearly contravenes these stated objectives. In fact, Councillor McBride, in a recent newsletter, both supports our desires and contradicts potential planning decisions by stating that adoption of the plans means we can manage where these homes are built, protecting greenbelt and urban green spaces from unwelcome development. That is exactly what we are trying to achieve. But it's not too late. You'll have read that there is widespread unease about the proposed building plans, with the 126 letters of objections clearly demonstrating that the development is unwelcome. Section 7.2 of the report lists the main points of concern, but whilst we are reassured that our voices have been heard, there is nothing to show that these concerns have been acted upon, in particular with regard to protecting green open spaces and prioritising brownfield development. The Fixby Lower Coat Field is integral to the area in many ways and is regularly used by dog walkers and ramblers and is home to several forms of wildlife. I don't have time to reference all of the valid objections made, but would draw your attention to the hugely disproportionate development plans and clear impacts on the visual amenity, and the very real traffic, road safety and air quality concerns, including a 500% increase in cars using Gurnhill Avenue, which is currently a quiet, safe 34-house cul-de-sac. These issues will simply be exacerbated by the significant other housing allocations in the vicinity, including planned developments in Calderdale. Simply put, the Fixby Lower Coat site is a short-term commercially driven opportunity that, if approved, will cause irreversible damage to the area in order to deliver less than 1% of the 15-year strategic plan. I ask that you reflect on your stated strategic objectives and study your conscience to ask whether this is the right decision now for the long-term interests of Fixby residents, and reject the application in favour of other developments on more appropriate and welcome sites. Thank you.
Councillor Apple.
Thank you, Chair. I'm here on behalf of the three councillors for Ashbrow Ward, and you will have seen in your planning updates that we've asked for a deferral of the application. Now, all three councils accept that this is a local plan allocation, but we do want to make sure that proposals are the most appropriate for the area and meet local needs. You will appreciate, having heard from Paul, that residents have significant objections, and we need to be fully aware of the facts to answer their questions and try to bring as many residents as possible along with us. As ward members in Ashbrow, we have been told that large site developments as a part of the local plan would involve extensive engagement with councillors. I do understand that officers have protocols currently, and I think they would say that they've met those protocols. But I do believe, with a site of this significance, we should be looking at engagement differently, and we should be looking at it much more extensively. I think we would have appreciated a little bit more of a heads up in terms of the revised plans before they came to committee and a recommendation was made. This has led to some difficulty for us to be able to keep residents updated as well, as you can imagine. Just more generally, in terms of the plans that have been put forward, I just want to raise a few points. I'm actually very happy with the affordable home target that's been set for this, and it's really important that there's been a target set for socially rented properties as well. I think that's really important, particularly in an area where the house prices are above average for Huddersfield, I would say. So it's important that people from different economic groups are able to enjoy the area. The only thing I would say about the affordable homes is there has been improvements in terms of the blocks of housing. So there was 2 and it's been moved to 4 now, but these are blocks of 9 homes, 10 homes, 14 homes and then 17, and I think a couple of the blocks are quite clearly on the periphery, so I do see them as quite separated out, and I would appreciate that being looked at again. That's not what I would imagine as pepper potting myself. Residents have consistently raised issues around traffic. I know it's been covered here, but I just want to quickly say about Lightridge Road and Gairnhill Road. And I appreciate what you said, Steve, today, and I think that's important, but I just want to raise the points that residents have about access and around issues with sight lines as well. In terms of the Bradley Bar improvements, you know, that's great to see, but just haven't seen anything about Netheroid Hill Road and Bradford Road junction, and the only thing I just wanted to query about that was what there potentially be as many households coming in using Bradford Road as well as Bradley. I know we've got the potential proposals up in Bradley, and I just want to know if that's had an impact in terms of the plans for Bradley Bar. Really good to see a Metro contribution. I think that's really important. I guess just on a more general point about bus, it's just whether we've got a good enough bus network to get people out of their cars to use the money that's going in. The construction management plan is going to be really important with this. It's really important that members and residents are engaged throughout the process, because there's going to be potentially a lot of disruption with the construction. And I think you've given an update on drainage, Bill, compared to what's actually in the committee report. It sounds like there's been some updates in the last couple of days. I couldn't quite hear what was said from the back there, so I assume that's a little bit more of an update in terms of what was actually in the report. But from what I saw in the report, there were still some concerns that residents had raised about water running into gardens on Lightridge Road and water running into troughs on Clough Lane during rainy periods. So there was obviously an objection from the Flood Authority at the time, but sounds like there was a bit of an update on that. I think just more generally, I just want to say we've asked for a deferral because we'd like a little bit more of a say in the process at this stage with residents. I do understand there's always going to be differences. We're not always going to get this right, but that's where we're coming from as local councillors. Okay, thank you.
We have one more speaker, and that's Jonathan Dubadin, who is speaking on behalf of the applicant.
Afternoon, Chair. My name is Jonathan Dubadin from ID Planning. I'm acting on behalf of Harron Homes. I have Liz Green from Opta Highways here, who is our highways consultant. I'm going to take a slightly unusual approach of not giving you a proper speech. I'd like to address a couple of the comments made by the residents and then open ourselves up to questions from members, because it's always a brave thing to do, I have to say. First things first, dealing with density, we think it's actually a low density scheme. We're at 25 dwellings per hectare, which is below your policy requirements, but we believe that's an appropriate design response to this particular site. In terms of traffic flows, you've heard from Mr Sampson that there are no issues here in relation to highway safety. Construction management plan, Councillor Uppal touched on, and we will engage with the local community on that. We think it's very important that construction traffic is managed appropriately, so we will engage with ward members on that and bring that forward. And in terms of drainage, in terms of surface water runoff, we actually have a solution which is a betterment. Currently, water runs off and runs into the gardens of the properties on Clough Lane. We have a solution which now addresses that and will not create a problem for those properties. Other than that, Chair, I'd ask members to support the recommendation, and we're happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Chair. I know the area very well, and been on the site, visit, look around the sites, and I accept the site has been allocated for housing land under new local plan which have been approved about 2 weeks ago. Yeah. But I think it's a bit too early to consider this application soon after the local plan approved. some resident might have not given much time to think about that. Even you heard that from our Developer Jonathan, is still construction management they haven't sorted out. They haven't sorted out drainage and other things. Yeah. So even the ward councillors, they haven't got much time to consult a resident. I'm not against the application, but what I'm looking for, I think because it's a bit too soon after the some resident might be thinking why they're rushing through, yeah. I think we should give it more time to the local resident, ward councillor to sit down and engage themselves with the officer or the developer as well to come out a very acceptable solution if there are any issue which have been not sorted out there. So what I'm looking for, I don't know, it depends on the member, what the member say. I would like to defer it for another circle. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think I'm not sure that I can agree that this is necessarily being rushed through, because if I read correctly, it's been with the council since last summer, so it's been with the council for a year. Yes, we would want as much consultation with the local residents as possible about the construction management plan, perhaps the highways, access points, etc. I can see we do have to accept, and all the arguments about putting residential accommodation on this site must have already been had during the process of not just agreeing the local plan, but in all the preparation around the local plan. So I think I will accept the officer's recommendation, and I will move that. But I do want, I know it's already in the conditions about the construction management plan, I would want to see as much consultation undertaken with residents about that, and perhaps about the actual highways access points as well, because I think there may be some concerns about local bus stops and things like that. So again, as much consultation as possible. But yes, I will move the recommendation.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I agree with a lot of what Councillor Patterson has said. I think we should be reminded that the recommendation is to delegate it to officers to approve. And whenever one does that at committee, there is always the possibility of it coming back to committee if things don't go as they should. Yes, the most important thing about this site, it seems to me, is that it is an allocation in the local plan. We can't get away from that, and those of us who've got sites which we contested during the local plan will no doubt have mixed feelings about sites like this. But it is what it is. And there is quite a lot to be said for the plan that we've got in front of us. It does seem to address a lot of the issues that have arisen during the course of discussions, and of course it will have gone through the local plan process, including examination in great detail, no doubt, by the planning inspector. And it's come out the other side. So it's there. There are a couple of things that I want to mention, and going on site this morning, it was fairly obvious that there was a bus stop right opposite the junction with Gurnhill Avenue, and
it does seem to me that one could be moved further down the road, away from the Clough Lane junction. It's actually not easy because there are a lot of drives coming into the road on both sides there. But I think to have bus stops near junctions is not a good idea to me, especially one where there's going to be an increase in traffic coming out of it. So I think that should be added to the list of things that need to be looked at. I know we talked about it on the bus this morning. I hear what was said, but I still think we need a move of that stop. Driving down Lightridge Road this morning, it's quite a long way to the next bus stop further down, so I don't think that would be a problem. A lot of the issues that have arisen, as I say, have been addressed. There is quite a good provision of public open space, which will clearly, the management of which will clearly be conditioned. I will go along with Councillor Patterson's recommendation. I'll second it.
Yeah, I agree with what's just been expressed by Councillor Pinnock and by Councillor Pattison. I too feel that I'd never like to see greenfield sites being used for development like this, but given the fact that it has been through a lot of work in terms of the local plan, I think we should be moving towards accepting this. There are certain things, I think, where I hope that planning officers will do further work with developers, particularly looking at things like the landscaping and the green infrastructure on site. Sections 10.37 and 10.38 talk about retention of existing trees, which is great, but I think that there is scope as well for further planting, both in terms of enhancing the appearance of the site, but also in terms of air quality and also noise pollution, particularly from the motorway. I do notice as well that there are certain hedges planned on the site, but I think this would be an ideal site for developing more hedges alongside roadways. So, for example, the route where the road comes in, following the line of the Kirklees Way, I think we've got trees on the plan there, whereas much more effective probably in terms of mitigating air pollution and so on would be to develop some really good hedging alongside that. So I think a lot of the local studies have shown that hedging is a lot more effective. Trees actually, if you get a canopy of trees, can actually make things worse because it traps the pollution beneath the branches. So I think things like that really need to be looked at carefully. I think with the drainage, again, potentially there could be some environmental gains by looking at ways in which some of the water could be captured on site towards the north of the site where it runs off. As you say, I think Bill said earlier about we saw the waterfall almost running off site there. I wonder if there is scope at that end of the site for perhaps developing things like ponds and reed beds and so on, which could hold the water on site so it would have a positive drainage effect, but also it would have positive impact in terms of biodiversity and the attractiveness of the site. Other things in terms of the transport plan, I agree with Councillor Pinnock's point about moving the bus stop. I think that should be fairly straightforward to do. Bus passes are good, but I think it's also important that we do talk to the combined authority and the bus operators about the frequency of the services, because we do need to make sure that the bus services are adequate. It's okay having a bus pass, but you need the buses to get on at the right time to get people to the right places. So that kind of discussion, especially as there's so much other development taking place in the area, I think is really important. That's it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I didn't realise, I used to work a lot up that area at one time, but I didn't realise that Gurnhill Avenue was agricultural, it is at the top end. The one thing that worries me is that we are covering over not greenfield sites now, we're covering over greenbelt. And that, I do not like that at all. Coming from a long line of farmers, it doesn't go down very well with me, that. And there's 252 houses there. There are 3 accesses and egress out of the estate. And also there's the Clough Lane one, which is into Lightcliffe Road, which is not a very good access and egress there. So if it does go through, I would like that to be looked at, you know, with intensity, because the sight lines there aren't good, and the access and egress into that lane isn't good. But at this moment in time, I can't agree with all this building on the green belt. I'm sorry, I'm just one of those awkward people. But I'm awkward in the right way. Once you start covering up greenbelt, and once you start covering those green fields up, they're covered up for life. Never forget that. Literally covered up for life. And 252 houses now. I do believe there's something happening, or going to happen, down Bradley Road in the near future. So I feel sorry for those people that live up there, because they're going to be infested with vehicles. And I don't think anybody's actually sat down and really given it a lot of thought. It's just gone through the local plan, and here it is 3 weeks later, it's all going about, we're going to build on everything that we can see. Well, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to agree with it today. Thank you.
Any more comments? Donna.
Thank you, Chair. Well, yeah, Ash just gone through a local plan, hasn't it? And I'm now scratching my head again and wondering if anybody really read the local plan properly. Because we've had people speaking about deferrals and people speaking about taking longer, and we need to look at it further. And, you know, local plan's been talked about for, well, I don't know how many years. I agree with Councillor Pinnock about the bus stop. That bus stop really does need moving. It's on that junction, and I completely agree that you don't put a bus stop on a junction. I can imagine that being a major problem. But to be honest, no, I don't think I can support this either. I just think it used to be a greenfield site, greenbelt site, and I mean, like I say, I looked at the local plan and I couldn't agree with that. So I won't be supporting this application either. But like I say, but if it does go through, I agree that Bradford Road needs looking at, Netherham Road needs looking at, the traffic is going to need looking at, and that bus stop is definitely going to need moving. Thank you.
Any more? Something's always got to be first, application-wise, when we've had a local plan done like we have done. It's been passed by inspectors, so it is tight, it's gone through. There's going to be winners and there's going to be losers. And unfortunately, this is the first big application that we've got, but it was going to come to us at some point in time. Bus stop move, yeah, that's obvious. 1 or 2 junctions there want sorting out. We've got good money for Bradley Bar. There's been good contributions from Aaron Holmes, there's no 2 ways about it. All in all, this won't go down well, but I think it's a good application. The affordable homes are distributed throughout the site very well, I believe. I'm in favour of it. I can't see any reason at all why we cannot make a decision today. There's no reason to defer it. Steve, have you got?
Through you, Chair, I'd just like to answer a few points that were raised. Firstly, the point that Councillor Opal mentioned about the any works to Neveroid Lane, stroke Bradford Road. In terms of the traffic generation from this site, it's expected there's going to be around circa 45 two-way movements in the peak. When you sit that alongside the existing peak movements along Bradford Road and at that junction, which is in the region of 2,700, it's difficult to demonstrate there's a material increase from this development in terms of those numbers, because from the development the development traffic will be dispersed onto the network. With respect to the relocation of a bus stop, we will make sure that that's in the brief for the scope of the next road safety audit at stage 2, so that will be looked at. And there was a mention about the construction management plan. Yes, there will be a condition for the construction management plan, but there will also be an additional condition relating to a pre-commencement condition survey for the local network on the local road, especially Gurnall Avenue, where it will be assessed for its condition now, with it throughout the development and post-development, to make sure that the conditions are maintained. Thank you, Chair.
Right. It's been moved by Councillor Pattison, seconded by Councillor Pinnock. Those in favour of this application, please show.
4, Chair.
4 against. 2. Abstain. 1.
Application's approved.
Next we go to page 27. This is the application at Westgate, Etmondwyke.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. My name is Glenn Wakefield. I'm the case officer dealing with this application. I'd just like to draw members' attention to the late update. There is information in there that hasn't included, that couldn't be included in the committee report prior to its publication. Members will recall that this application came to the committee in November last year when it was deferred. The application site is located approximately 0.5 kilometres from the centre of Heckmondwike, well, to the west of Heckmondwike. You can see it on the aerial photograph here, outlined in red. The site occupies an area of about 1.6 hectares. At present, it has an unkempt appearance. It was formerly a car park which was used in connection with Flush Mills, which is on the other side of Westgate. You can see on these photographs here, this gives a typical view of how it looks at the moment. The nearest residential properties are at Boundary Street, which is on the western border of the site. You can see those properties here, a row of terrace properties, and then closest you can just see the tops here of some bungalows which immediately abut the site. The original proposal was for a couple of retail units and a drive-through restaurant. It's an outline application with all matters reserved except for layout and access. Since this application came to committee last November, the applicant has amended the scheme to omit the drive-through element, which was here. So now the application is effectively for 2 retail units on the site with the necessary infrastructure. There is a full assessment of this in the committee report, but I will just touch on the key issues for members. The site is allocated in the local plan as a housing site. That's H1772. Consequently, this proposal constitutes a departure. Section 38, subsection 6 of the Planning and Compensation Act 2004 requires that planning applications are determined in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. Officers consider that in this instance this proposal represents a significant conflict with the adopted local plan and there are no material considerations to outweigh this lack of conformity. With regard to urban design, the proposal does not seek to secure detailed design of the buildings on site at present. This would be achieved by a subsequent reserved matters application. Having said this, it does seek full permission for the layout. The proposed retail units would be located to the east of the site, as you can see here, over on that side of the actual application site. The proposed retail units would be far enough away, it's considered, not to create an overshadowing effect on the nearest properties on Boundary Street. The layout of the site has been amended to take into account concerns about these trees on the boundary of the site, so it has been shifted towards the west slightly, and officers consider that this now does offer adequate protection for those existing trees. As you can see probably from the previous proposal, I'll just put the previous one on, the car parking area here has been reduced in scale, and also there has been an area created along the boundary of the site here which could accommodate a landscape buffer zone to help reduce the impact on the amenity of those residential properties. A revised noise assessment has been submitted, which officers have assessed and consider that the information in there is accurate and does give a good indication of the likely noise that would result from this development. Officers have reviewed the assessment and agree with its conclusions that noise from the development could be satisfactorily mitigated. As the site is not within a local centre, the applicant has provided a revised supporting sequential analysis and retail impact assessment. The revised impact assessment is considered to provide a proportionate level of assessment for this proposal and demonstrates that there are no sequentially preferable sites for the proposed use and there wouldn't be a significant adverse impact associated with this proposal. Although the site is semi-derelict, it does provide habitat opportunities for wildlife. The applicant has submitted a supporting ecological assessment and a tree survey. With regard to the development impact on trees, I've touched on that earlier in that officers consider that the layout now is acceptable and won't have a serious detrimental impact on those trees. However, whilst the applicant has provided an amended ecological assessment, it's considered that this still does not adequately consider the potential ecological impacts associated with this proposal. The site is within flood zones 1, 2 and 3, so it's a full Monty. The highest risk is to the south down here, which is closest to the watercourse, as you'd expect. The applicant has provided a flood risk assessment and an associated sequential assessment, and since the application was last considered at committee, officers are now of the view that the proposal could be implemented without increasing the risk of flooding in the area and could be satisfactorily drained. In relation to highways, there will be a new access created onto Westgate, as you can see here. It's considered that adequate sight lines could be achieved at this point. and that the parking provision which has been suggested by this application would be satisfactory. Consequently, subject to the detail of the junction works and parking arrangements being agreed prior to any development commencing, the site could be developed without having a detrimental impact on highway safety or the local highway network. There have been a total of 22 representations lodged in relation to this application. The issues raised and the associated responses have been detailed in the committee report and the subsequent update. In this case, it's recommended that committee delegates this back to officers to refuse the application for the reasons detailed in the committee report, following the expiration of the additional site publicity associated with the site's local plan allocation. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, we have two speakers. First one is Colin Berry, who is speaking on behalf of Spen Valley Civic Society.
Good afternoon. This representation is made on behalf of Spen Valley Civic Society. We object to the application and support the officer's recommendation for refusal of planning permission for the following reasons. Firstly, the application is contrary to the recently adopted local plan. If the local plan is to have any meaning or significance, the allocations contained in the plan, which have all been considered and approved by the appointed planning inspector, have to be respected and adhered to. Otherwise, in our view, there will be planning chaos for the next 15 to 20 years. Spen Valley Civic Society supported the proposal to allocate this site for housing at the outset of the consultation in the local plan process, as we believe it has the potential to deliver a retirement village with easy access to Heckman Dwight Town Centre, public transport links and healthcare facilities. I attended the local plan examination hearings in respect of Spen Valley matters as representative of the Civic Society. No objections were made regarding this site's allocation as housing. It is inconceivable that the applicants, whose business is land acquisition and management, were unaware of the consultation process that lasted the best part of 3 years, but made no representation to the planning inspector. Spen Valley Civic Society considers housing allocation is the appropriate designation for the site. A retail designation would be contrary to the policies regarding retail development in the local plan because the site is outside the principal town centre boundary and the principal shopping area. This proposed development would cause further harm to the existing retail outlets in Heckman Dwight Town Centre, which are already struggling to survive. The site has no history of either industrial or retail use, but it does have a housing history. I'm hoping that members were given copies of 2 pictures that I sent to you, which demonstrates that prior to being used as a car park, it was actually occupied by 2 grand houses and large formal gardens. The houses were demolished around 1970, after which the site was used as a car park for employees of Flush Mills until they were demolished. The site is bordered by housing on one side and urban green space, i.e. Firth Spark, on the other. Housing is clearly the appropriate designation. We feel that the applicant should be really quite happy to go along with what we propose as something well on the site. Thank you.
We have Nick Willett, who's the agent.
Nick Wilk for the applicant. Members, government planning policy advises councils to allocate land for housing and employment needs. Crucially though, it also says that councils should allocate land for retail development. However, the now adopted local plan doesn't allocate any land for retail development whatsoever. But why is this an issue, you may ask? Well, the government recognises that town centres need to be supported to survive, and therefore retail sites should be allocated to meet the scale and type of development needed over the planned period. The council's own studies show that residents of Hetton Wyke are currently travelling to other places away from the town in order to get many of their day-to-day non-food products, which is why these studies identify an undersupply of facilities selling non-food products in the town, and why this proposal can help bring residents back to shopping in the town of Hetton Wyke. This would be a boost to the long-term health and viability of the town centre. If this site is developed for housing, it removes any possibility of major retail development to support the town centre in the foreseeable future, because as agreed with your officers, there are no sites allocated for retail and there are no other sites available in and around the town centre. Hetton Wyke consequently cannot meet the identified need for new retail development over the planned period. And this means the town centre could enter a more serious decline. Birstall Retail Park, for example, is seen by the council as one of the challenges to town centre health in North Kirklees. Members, this application before you today represents an increasingly rare £4.5 million investment in a North Kirklees town from a key national retailer, at a time when other national retailers are pulling out of local towns such as Dewsbury. This development will provide 50 jobs for next year and in 20 years' time in what is known to be an area with higher than average unemployment. Once built, housing development cannot provide such jobs, and this ideally placed edge of centre site will be lost forever. It's also important to remember that the committee is perfectly entitled to make its own decision on this application. Housing, whilst important, isn't the be-all and end-all of what the local plan is supposed to achieve. As one of the committee members said last time this case was debated in November, I quote, "We don't need to be frightened of the housing issue. We could accept or reject these proposals. We urge members to approve this development, which will be beneficial to local consumers, beneficial for job seekers, and beneficial for the health and long-term viability of Hetton Wyke Town Centre." Thank you.
Members. Councillor Pinnock, then Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Chair. Well, to be perfectly honest, I find this quite straightforward, and we have an officer's recommendation to refuse it. I do think we should, as the Civic Society says, respect the allocations in the local plan. Although I hear what Mr Willock said about Hetton Wyke Town Centre, I'm not convinced that unless you stretch the boundaries of the town centre, that this is actually in the town centre. It has a very well used and well valued park in between it and the town centre. And whilst I hear what's said about other available sites for development, I'm not sure that at this stage the town centre needs a development like this, which may well take trade from the town centre and not help it at all. I think that we've got a recommendation which is to delegate to refuse, and I quite happily would like to move that.
Yes, I would like to second that. I also would support refusal. Much of what I was going to say, Councillor Pinnock has very clearly expressed. I thought the arguments put forward by Mr Berry on behalf of Civic Society were very good ones, and the argument that he put forward that this would be a good site, possibly for fairly specialist housing, perhaps even some extra care housing here, would be a very good use of this site. I also think if you develop sites such as apartments for more elderly residents, with some careful landscaping, you could also meet the ecological needs of the site. You could make it very attractive. We've heard that in the past there were some attractive gardens here alongside some large houses. I think you could return to that with some careful planning to provide something which would be an asset to the town. I also am not sure about the arguments about the benefits of retail development. I think that could detract from the town centre, and I just think that we need to stick with the allocation that's been made within the local plan of using this site for housing.
I think just to change, we're all on the same frequency here. Yeah, this area lends itself to housing specifically for the elderly, I would think, smaller houses. And I wouldn't think that the traders in Ekman could be complaining. They'd be clapping their hands, because at least ways it's going to probably up the trade. If you fill out that area with 2 large retail outlets, that's not serving any useful purpose at all. We're infested with retail outlets nowadays, you know. You don't have to go so far to find a big retail outlet. Here, there's a big area of land there which lends itself to housing. And we always say we're looking for housing for the elderly, not far from the centre of Ekman. What better? It's out there, it's laid out for you. I totally agree, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I too am going to accept the officer's recommendation for refusal. I do appreciate that the developers have listened to the reasons why we deferred it last time, and certainly I think 2 retail units is certainly better than the takeaway that was suggested. But I do, again, think that, I mean, all our town centres are suffering, and I don't, and Hepburn White is a small town centre, and if it's going to have any life whatsoever in the 10, 20 years to come, it's going to be in small food shops or the butchers and the bakers, plus sort of more individual shops which will attract people from other areas, not the B&Qs or whatever, Range or whatever these retail shops or sheds would become. And I do think there is a need for some, well, certainly for something like a residential, elderly persons residential housing in that site, in that area. But any housing, to be honest, would be better than more industry or more shops in there. I think Hepburn White needs to concentrate on itself, very much the town centre, and not this peripheral type of site. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I completely agree. I lived in Hepburn White probably about 20 years ago for only a short period of time, and the town centre has always been that small town centre, sort of around a certain supermarket area. I think to go any further out, and like it's already been said, there is quite a nice big park would be in between it. I don't think it's work. It's going to take people out of that town centre. I think some sort of retirement village on that section would be absolutely fantastic, and I think that would do a lot better for the town and get people in. So I'm in agreement.
Right. A little bird told me this morning that trees have already started to be felled on this site as well. Naughty. Right, it's been moved by Councillor Pinnett, seconded by Councillor Walker. I think it should be 7-0, but we'll see. All those in favour?
Unanimous, Chair. Unanimous,
thank you. Next, page 43, and we're going down to Leeds Road, Huddersfield, downtown. Gwen.
Thank you, Chair. Glenn Wakefield, again, the case officer on this application. Again, I'd just like to draw your attention to the late update. There's some further information in there that wasn't included in the committee report when it was published. The site is located close to the east of Huddersfield, within an area which has a commercial character, as you can see on the aerial photograph here. The site currently comprises of a number of sports pitches, associated buildings, access and parking areas, which currently provide training facilities for the Huddersfield Town Football Club and also the Syngenta Sports and Social Club. Part of the site also includes a scrubby area of land, which you can see here on the northeastern corner, and the Huddersfield Broad Canal runs along here, along the northern boundary of the site. This part of the whole of the canal is allocated as a local wildlife site in the local plan. This area here, the area with the pictures on, is allocated as urban green space in the local plan. This scrubby area here is allocated as a priority employment area, or a wider priority employment area, again in the local plan. The applicant seeks full planning permission to redevelop the site, and this would include the demolition of the existing main building on site, which is here, and then replacing it with a 3-storey purpose-built building which would incorporate training, therapy and administrative facilities. The reorientation of existing pitches, the creation of new pitches and associated training facilities. The erection of a new viewing stand, which is this building here, which would overlook the training pitch. The erection of grounds maintenance facilities at this point on the site, and the formation of new parking and new access arrangements. The majority of the site, as I mentioned earlier, is urban green space, and that is shown here, marked in green. That is the existing pitches, etc. As you can see here, that small scrubby area forms part of this much wider priority employment area in the local plan. It's considered that in relation to the urban green space area, that this proposal will continue and enhance the urban green space use of the site and will maintain the quality and function of that space, and is therefore in accordance with policy PLP 61. With regard to the area falling within the priority employment area, the provision of playing pitches is not traditionally seen as an employment use. However, in this particular case, the facilities would be for the exclusive use of Huddersfield Town Football Club, and therefore form a commercial operation. And also this proposal, or the applicant has indicated that this proposal would increase jobs at the site by approximately 20%. Officers therefore consider that the proposal would accord with the aims of policy PLP 8. With regard to urban design, the area falls within a predominantly commercial area, so there is a variation of designs and materials used in those buildings. The proposal before us, the main building, which would be built on site, would be of a contemporary design, would utilise modern materials, but would also incorporate features from the local vernacular. The other proposed buildings are more utilitarian in nature, but are considered to be of an appropriate design, bearing in mind the current character of the area, and these would harmonise well within the existing setting. I'll just run through the buildings here. This again is the other elevation of the main building. Then we have grounds maintenance buildings here, and the new viewing stand which would overlook the training pitch. The site is remote from residential properties. It's therefore considered that, bearing in mind the existing use of the site, noise nuisance associated with this proposal is not likely to add significantly to the existing noise climate. The proposal includes the provision of floodlighting, which could cause an adverse impact on the nearest residential properties. However, it's proposed to include a planning condition which would restrict the times when the lights could be used and therefore mitigate that impact. None of the habitats on site are considered to have important ecological features. However, the site does run close to the local wildlife site adjacent, as part of the canal corridor. However, officers consider that, subject to the mitigation and enhancements that have been put forward and have been outlined in the committee report, the impact of this development on local ecology can be satisfactorily managed. The site falls within flood zone 3 and therefore there is a risk of flooding. A flood risk assessment has been submitted in support of this application. It concludes that the site can be developed without increasing flood risk on site or in the vicinity of the site. Both the local lead flood authority and the Environment Agency have reviewed the supporting information and have concluded that, subject to the inclusion of planning conditions that have been outlined in the committee report, the proposal is acceptable with regard to flood risk. With regard to highways issues, the proposal would make use of the existing site access, and that would involve improving these arrangements. The potential impacts on the highway network have been fully considered and outlined in the committee report, but to summarise, access, parking and vehicle manoeuvring arrangements are considered to be acceptable, bearing in mind the level of traffic that will be generated associated with this use. The site falls close to 2 listed locks on the Huddersfield Broad Canal. The impact of the proposal on the setting of these heritage assets has been considered. Officers consider that, subject to the use of sympathetic materials on the refurbishment of the existing first team building, which will remain on site, this can actually be controlled by planning condition, then in those circumstances the proposal would not have a significant impact on those heritage assets. With regard to the Syngenta Sports and Social Club, it's proposed to require that any permission is subject to a Section 106 agreement, which would require that the facilities that would be lost as part of this development must be replaced elsewhere, which in this particular case the applicant has indicated would be at the Leeds Road Sports Complex here, which is approximately 500 metres to the north-east. And that Section 106 agreement would require that those facilities are provided within a specified time frame to ensure that they are available for the social club to occupy prior to them being lost on this site here. For members' information, there have been no representations made in relation to this proposal. It's therefore recommended that committee delegate approval of this application and the issuing of the decision notice to the head of the strategic investment in order to complete a list of conditions, including those contained within the report, and to secure a Section 106 agreement to formally link the closure of the existing Syngenta Club facilities to the provision of new facilities at the Leeds Road Sport Complex. Thank you, Chair.
We have one speaker, it's Joshua Hellowell, who is the agent speaking on behalf of the applicant.
Chairman, members of the committee, thanks for the opportunity to speak. As I said, I'm the agent acting on behalf of Huddersfield Town Football Club, and just wanted to take the opportunity to highlight some of the points in the officer's report and indeed the recommendation to approve the application back to delegate authority to approve the application subject to the Section 106 agreement. The applicant engaged with the council and indeed yourselves as part of a formal pre-app submission, which was generally well received. Following this, the application before you today was submitted. During the determination, the club and myself have readily engaged with the council to ensure that all queries have been swiftly and satisfactorily dealt with. In this context, it should be noted that following the initial consultation when it was submitted, it was evident that further discussion and information was required in relation to the ecology, canals and rivers, conservation, highways and flood risk. But with regard to all of these aforementioned matters, we've sought to provide the needed clarity and where necessary make fundamental changes to the scheme to accommodate the requests of the consultees. This has included the repositioning of the proposed show pitch and accepting the material changes to the recladding of the existing first team building. In doing so, Huddersfield Town Football Club have demonstrated a clear desire to provide a development that everybody in Kirklees can be proud of and contributes positively to the mixture of uses prevalent along Leeds Road. On this note, it's also worth highlighting that throughout discussions, Kirklees Council, and particularly the case officer Mr Wakefield, have been most helpful in facilitating the progression of the application and providing key input where necessary. The result of this holistic approach to the proposals is that the application is presented to you today without any outstanding concerns or objections from the consultees. Secondly, it's considered the proposal represents sustainable development in accordance with the requirements of the framework, a sentiment echoed in section 11 of the officer's report. The site is currently utilised as a football training facility, and its expansion and enhancement is considered far more sustainable than to relocate the entire facility elsewhere. Furthermore, the continuation of the existing use allows for the proposal to be used positively in the context of the urban green space policy, which doesn't seek to prohibit development, which relates to a continuation or enhancement of the main use of the site. Huddersfield Town Football Club have aspirations to build upon the recent on-field successes by establishing top training infrastructure, and that will hopefully allow the club to continue to compete and further widen the club's and town's appeal. By supporting the application, you'll be facilitating such growth and supporting what is clearly a great asset to our town. I'm pleased to know the recommendation is for approval subject to the 106 agreement, and I would therefore urge members to accept the recommendation. Thank you for your time. If you've got any questions, I'm here to answer.
Councillor Pattison, then Councillor Bellamy.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm very happy to support this application, and I do hope that Huddersfield Town get to make the best of use of it in future years, and other visiting clubs, etc. But I must just ask before, I haven't actually moved it at the moment. I don't quite understand this additional condition that we've got in the update. Well, what I don't understand is what does the last bullet point mean by no drinking or sleeping accommodation on site? It's not meant to be a hotel, if that's what it's referring to. Is it suggesting that there can be no bar facility? Or what?
Through you, Chair, it's directed at ensuring that these facilities are not open to the public, so that you have significant numbers of people coming into the site and using bar facilities and sleeping at the site. The idea being that you don't want to have a concentration of people who might be worse for wear, perhaps in that location when there is a flooding event. It's accepted that as part of this proposal there will be facilities within the main building, but they will be for the club themselves to use, not for the general use of the public.
Well, that's fine as long as that's what's wanted. But, did that ought to be reworded? Would it trip somebody up later on by no drinking? It even suggests that you can't drink water.
Well, that's been reported to you from what the Environment Agency have asked us to do. Now, we can word that how we want in order to get the same meaning, so to speak. So that's simply what they've requested. So yes, in answer to your question, yes, we can reword that. Yeah.
Well, in that case, I'm happy to support the additional condition as long as it actually doesn't, well, it is what you say it means rather than what the words that are written on here.
Did you move? Right. Are you doing or? Right. Okay. Right. Well, I was just going to say, to be honest, Councillor Patterson queried the same thing as I was going to do, actually. I'm like, whoa, hang on a minute, what's that about? I'm happy to move officer's recommendation. The only thing is, I'm quite disappointed that that video weren't back that we had at the pre-application, with maybe a bit extra in it, but never mind. I'm just thinking, can we have another condition in? Can they start winning games, please? We can have a word. But yeah, more than happy to move officer's recommendation.
Got one question on security. Will it be robust enough to keep spies from Leeds United out?
Well, I've had the conversation with the family working for the club. I've made that very clear.
Mohan, then Rob.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with all my members, yeah, in support in this application. But I just want to know, I noticed there is a long history of planning applications. In a short time, there are 14 applications on this side, yeah? I don't know, after this application be approved, there might be more and more coming on. And what's the reason that? 14 applications in very short
Well,
time.
it's a popular site. They've put applications in to develop the site in the past, and it just happens that there's that number of applications that we've reported as the history. That's what they are. So.
Are these applications being implemented or what?
Some I think have been implemented. I'm not sure if all of them have, but certainly some of those applications have been implemented, yes.
Right, thank you, Chair. I generally support this application, but I'm a little bit disappointed that some of the issues that were raised at the pre-application stage in relation to potentially improving the ecological value of the site have not really been taken up. I don't see any reference to them really in here. I think at the pre-application stage, one thing I mentioned was that this is smack in the middle of the Green Streets corridor down Leeds Road. That, I thought, was a major planning and highways initiative to look at issues such as air quality in that area. And I think we should be taking the opportunity, when we've got quite a big site like this, which is adjacent to Leeds Road, to take the opportunity to do some more interesting things, which also might, in the longer term, make it a better site, cheaper site to run, and a site which has got more value. So, looking at it, I think in terms of water, this is already a flood area, potentially. I think we should be looking at the management of water on site much more closely. We should be looking at issues like retaining water on site, reuse of grey water and things like that. Because a lot of water will be used for things like watering pitches and things. A lot of water will be used for things like showers and things for the people training on site. There's a lot more can be done there. And also, I think it's okay to say, yeah, we're not damaging the ecological value of the site. But that isn't really very ambitious. I think we could do a lot more to look at the landscaping of the site, and potentially with some of the buildings as well. I think, also in terms of design, I think away from the main building, quite like that. I quite like its kind of contemporary styling. But some of the other buildings, they're just sheds, aren't they, really? I don't think we've thought very much about doing something that looks better. And could we do things, you know, like sort of green roofs and things like that, perhaps green walls on some of the things, where, yeah, it'd be a bit different. It'd make it an attractive place for people to come to. It'd be something a little bit different, and it would bring some value as well. But I think we certainly should be looking at the perimeter of the site very carefully. I can see you don't want loads of trees where you're going to get leaves and things on the pitches which could cause problems. But I'd just like to see our officers working with the developers really closely to think how we can maximise benefits from a site like this. So generally I'm in favour. I'd like, with a lot of this planning stuff we do, I'd like just to be more ambitious really, thinking about the long-term impact.
Through you, Chair, the report does indicate in the list of conditions that as part of any approval we will be looking for them to submit an ecological design strategy. They have provided an ecological assessment as part of the application process, and our biodiversity officer has looked at that, agrees with its conclusions, but has asked that should planning permission be granted, then the applicant should submit an ecological design strategy, and that would look at how biodiversity can be enhanced as part of this, application. So that is an issue that can be controlled under the terms of the planning permission via the planning condition.
We have to do this thing, you know. Yeah, I have to agree with all that's been said. I agree with what Rob said, and I think if the officers are going to, if we're going to give it the okay, and the officers are going to look at it, all these things they need to take into consideration, look at them, and get the best out of that little plot down there. Because considering a lot of plots, it's a small plot, but it's going to be a very valuable one. And I have to support it, yeah. It's a good idea. Thank you.
Any more? Well, it has been moved by Councillor Bellamy. I am a seconder, so Donald? Yeah. All those in favour? Unanimous 7-0. Thank you.